Hello, everyone. Welcome back to The Art of Being a Woman. I'm your host, Courtney, and today we are discussing the art of knowing when to walk away. This is a topic that I wish I saw when I was younger, because one of the inevitable parts of life is that relationships come to an end. And a lot of the time, we will have to be the initiators of a relationship ending. Now, that's very uncomfortable for many of us because as women, we're naturally very compassionate and we feel the emotions of other people, whether we'd like to or not. And we're always considering how the other person is feeling. We all know that it's hurtful when someone decides to not be in a relationship with us or is just no longer willing to share their life with us. Because we know that it's painful to experience that. And on top of that, the people that we've been in relationships with are people that we truly love, or at least loved very deeply for a long time. It makes it very hard to really know when to walk away. This is why I wanted to discuss this topic specifically on a podcast, but also write about it. So whenever we are in a situation where we're in a relationship and we're not sure if we should walk away from it or not, we have some grounding points that we can come back to really feel confident in our decision, even though it's uncomfortable. The 4 steps that we're going to get into today are 4 different big signs to know when it's time to walk away. I'm sure there's many more than 4 ways to know when to walk away. These are the 4 that came to mind when I was brainstorming this topic, because I was really looking for the more subtle signs, because not every relationship is extremely toxic. Not every relationship is negative. It's just a matter of having that intuitive feeling that it's not right for you and you can't shake it. You can't really prove it or pinpoint it. You can't blame it on something outside of you, so you feel a bit stuck. The 4 signs we're discussing are the following. 1, when it no longer supports our growth. 2, when we are holding on out of fear. 3, when it doesn't align with what we want. And 4, when it no longer feels like an active choice. Let's get straight into number 1, when it no longer supports our growth. Many times when we get into new relationships, it's because on some level, and it's usually energetic and spiritual, whether we realize it or not, we're on the same level of awareness and understanding with one another. Whether we went through similar things in life, we've experienced similar feelings and situations in life, and there's a familiarity in the relationship. Now, what happens a lot of times in relationships is one person starts to wake up a little bit. And what I mean by wake up is they start to become more conscious of the things that they're feeling, the thoughts that they're having, and the things that they're doing. They realize that the things they used to do are not fulfilling anymore. And the things that they used to talk about are not interesting anymore. And this happens to every single one of us, but in different points of our life, because we're growing. As humans, we are always going to grow in our level of awareness and consciousness. Some grow faster than others, and some grow at different times than others. There are those more expected times where life hits us, whether we go from our teenage years to young adulthood. There's a big shift in maturity that happens. And then from our 20s to our 30s, or even our early 20s to our mid-20s. I'm currently 25, so I can only speak about how much I've grown across my own lifespan, but I know that who I am now and who I'm going to be in a year from now and 5 years from now is going to be very different, because I'm very open to growing all the time. Now, unfortunately, when we are someone that seeks the growth, we seek that change, even if it's uncomfortable, and we're always trying to better ourselves. And I don't just mean physically, I mean emotionally, mentally, spiritually. We're going to realize that the people around us don't necessarily care as much as we do about these things. And it's not because they're not wise, and it's not because they're falling behind or that they're unaware of certain things that we're aware of. It's just not their path. It's not something that is necessary for their journey in life. And that can be sad. It could be frustrating even, because we can love people so much, but we feel like we're growing apart from them. I know I have had many friendships like this where it would get to a point where I would realize that my mindset was growing and expanding, and my awareness of myself was changing. Initially, I would talk about it whenever I would have those one-to-one deep friendship conversations, but you can sense when the person that you're talking to is either not interested in what you're saying, doesn't find it as important as you do, and perhaps they get bothered by it. Perhaps they're getting uncomfortable that you are changing so much so quickly. Now, people really only get upset and uncomfortable when we are changing and growing because it makes them feel as if they're doing something wrong. And they tend to express that in a way of telling you that you think you're better than them, or you think you're all that, you think you're so important. And that can sting, especially when you don't have anybody in your corner that's also on that same path as you, that's focused on growth and becoming a better version of themselves. And this can be a friendship, this can be a family member, and this can be a romantic relationship. Now, depending on your circumstances, you'll know whether or not you need to really cut them off. I'm not going to tell you what to do at all. These are just my suggestions, and these are things that I live by personally. And if I ever change my mind, I will be the first to let you know. But currently, whenever I do get to a point like this in any of my relationships where I realize the other person is getting offended by my growth, or they get annoyed by it, impatient with it, frustrated, even if it's passive, that's when I know it's time to walk away. Now, how you choose to walk away is also up to you. I'm working on that myself. I don't always have that figured out. It's very hard for me to really be confrontational and tell a person that it's not working out, because I don't like to tell people what they're doing wrong. I'm a big believer that if you don't ask me to tell you what bothers me about you or what throws me off about you, I don't share it, because many times people are not ready to hear about themselves. And I get it. I've been like that for a long time. It wasn't until I started becoming more self-aware that I realized how beneficial constructive criticism can be. So if you're currently in a relationship and this type of dynamic resonates with you, really ask yourself if it's making you happy, and not if the person is making you happy, because we can't expect people in our lives to make us happy. Only we can make ourselves happy. And I will talk about that in a separate episode. But we know when we're in the space of another person and we're dreading it, or it brings us down, or our walls go up because we already know how we're being perceived, and certain things that we're interested in we have to suppress because it makes the other person uncomfortable. Those are all the signs that you need, in my opinion, that you're in a relationship that no longer supports your growth. Before we move on to step 2, I just want to say that it's never going to be easy to walk away from someone that we love and someone that we care about. So if we're waiting for that moment when someone just gets on our nerves to a point where we don't feel bad at all, we could be waiting a very long time. That's number 1. And number 2, the longer we hold on to relationships that do not align with who we are and who we know we're becoming, the more we block our own blessings, and the more that we block the opportunity for new people to come into our life that are more aligned for us. Because no matter what level we are in our own self-growth and healing, whatever you want to call it, there's always someone on that level, even if you don't see them in your environment at this current moment. So they will find you. And I'm a big believer in that. Of course, you might be tested after you walk away from one relationship. Someone similar might try to come into your life. That's just a test from the universe to see if you really learned your lesson. Because sometimes we can let someone go and then we can regret it and think to ourselves that maybe we shouldn't have put ourselves first, whatever the case may be. and then someone new will come along. And we're happy that someone new came along because we weren't necessarily sure they would. And we repeat the whole cycle again. So there's layers to this. We have to exercise putting our self-growth first, that's for sure. And we also have to practice owning our decisions and exercising discernment in future relationships. We can't predict how a relationship is going to feel in the future, but what we could do is discern as quickly as possible if something is supporting our growth or it isn't. The sooner we do that, the sooner we can move on and the less pain that we experience. Sign number 2, when you are holding on out of fear. This should be the most obvious sign for all of us. And that doesn't mean it's easy, but anytime we're scared to do something, that should really make us stop and think for a moment, because we never want to be doing anything out of fear. Because ultimately, it's not that we want to be doing something, we're scared of what's going to happen if we don't do it. That's an obvious sign we don't want to be in the relationship. I definitely have been in relationships where I let it drag out longer than it should have because I didn't want to admit to myself that it was no longer supporting my growth. I knew that my opinions and my mindset and my focus was different than those around me, but I still didn't want to be alone. I didn't want to move on and have that period of not having a boyfriend or not having close girlfriends. So I convinced myself that I was the problem. I convinced myself that I needed to just chill out on how passionate I was to focus on self-growth and self-love and all of those things. But ultimately, it was making me unhappy, and I would start to dread certain relationships and certain environments because I knew that I was going to have to dim my light, so to speak. Now, nobody was making me dim my light. It was just how I felt. I felt very uncomfortable being my full self around certain people because I knew that they liked an older version of me better. And I almost felt as if it was my fault that I had become a new version of myself, and that's not what they signed up for, technically. So I stayed in a lot of relationships in my teenage years, my early adult years, out of fear of losing friends, losing a boyfriend, because I didn't want to be alone. And I also didn't want to let them down. So it was only through me facing my fears and really walking away from relationships that I was only staying in out of fear of being alone or fear of upsetting them that I learned that my happiness was never coming from my relationships. It was always a matter of how I felt about myself, with myself, and within. I would have never learned that, though, had I held on too tightly to those people in my life out of fear. So if you're in a relationship, really ask yourself, are you entertaining this relationship because you want to, or is it a fear of being alone? Is it a fear of not having enough people in your circle to lean on? Because the truth about fear is that behind it is the more confident version of you, the more fearless version of you. And fear will talk up a big game and convince you that it's not smart to be unafraid and it's not wise to take risks. But that's just because fear gains more power over you when you believe in it so deeply. After I let those relationships go, I really became unrecognizable in terms of my personality. I used to be a girl that only would have a great time when she was around her friends and when she had a good group of friends and a good boyfriend. But now I'm someone that is even happier on my own. And I don't mean it in a lonely way. I mean, I truly enjoy my own company. I make myself very happy. And no, it doesn't come from spending money and shopping and eating good food and all these self-care, self-love, beauty routines that are super viral and popular. it doesn't come from any of that, because that's also a distraction from sitting with ourselves and facing ourselves. It truly comes from me being alone with myself. Journaling with myself brings me tremendous joy. And it used to not. I used to avoid myself when I was in these relationships with other people. So it's very interesting how when we face our fears, the version of ourself that becomes unlocked. If you are waiting for a sign to know when to walk away from someone, please respect the sign of fear. If you're only staying with someone because you're scared of how you're going to feel and what you're going to do with yourself after the fact, let that be your sign that it's time to walk away and really get to know yourself again and reconnect with yourself, because our relationship with ourselves is the longest relationship we'll ever have. And that's just a fact of life. So we must pour into that relationship sooner rather than later, and more than we pour into relationships with other people, because other people will always come and go. Sign 3, when it doesn't align with what you want. Sometimes we can be in a relationship and we just know it's not what we want for our future self. Perhaps we've been manifesting, visualizing, creating a dream board, whatever you want to call it. Perhaps you've been journaling with yourself and you start asking yourself these questions about your future and what you want your future to look like. These are great questions to ask yourself, and visualizing and manifesting are great things that you can do for yourself, because it really connects you to the deepest, most innocent parts of yourself. What do you truly want? If you can have anything you want from life and all the limitations that we could be experiencing in the moment, if they didn't exist, what would we want from life? What would we want for ourselves? Who would we want to be? And when we get to that point where we allow ourselves to dream and have hopes and wishes, we can start to paint a picture on the type of relationships that we want in life. And what can happen is they don't align with the relationships we're in the current moment. And when I started getting honest about that disconnect, I had to act accordingly. Now, this always made me a bit uncomfortable because it sounds selfish. It sounds high maintenance even to know you want better for yourself and decide that the people in your life are not it. They're not it anymore. But you have to realize that it's your life and you set the standards for your life. It doesn't matter if people think that you expect too much. They're just not enough for you. It's not that they're not enough in general. They're going to be more than enough for the right people for their path, but not yours. Now, the thing is about alignment, it sounds so amazing in theory to just live in alignment and follow your heart's desires. It sounds great, but it's very hard to do because it usually means going against what feels safe and going against what's predictable. And those are two things that as people, we really hate to experience. We don't like feeling unsafe, and we don't like when things are uncertain. But those are the prices we pay for alignment. It's that surrender. It's that trust in that higher power that we're not alone in this game of life and that we're supported in the things that we want. There's a Kabbalistic belief, which is an ancient spiritual wisdom. It's universal. It talks about the energy of life and the purpose of life. One of their main principles is that if you have a desire, it's because the desire itself already wants you. Meaning, if you're craving a donut, the donut already exists. You're just craving it. Because how could you truly desire something? How can you crave something that doesn't exist? Sometimes the things that we desire do not exist in the physical realm, but energetically and spiritually it exists. And the more that we believe in our desires to come true, without us manipulating circumstances and attaching too much to our desires, we end up manifesting them into our physical reality. That's truly how it works. That's manifestation, and it's real. And it's something that every single one of us experience. The funny thing is, manifestation is not necessarily with positive desires all the time. It can be with negative desires. When we have a fear of something and we believe that our fear is going to happen, there is no way around it, that's more likely to manifest. Because we have a desire, whether we realize it or not, we have a desire to be right in our fear, and we believe that our fear is so real and accurate, even if we have no proof. So that manifests it. It's something to consider, especially with relationships, because there's so much talk online about women's opinions on men and men's opinions on women. And a lot of it is distorted. A lot of it is projections of people's wounds and people's negative experiences, which we all go through. We all go through negative experiences in relationships because they bring our own garbage to the surface. And by garbage, I mean our own baggage. We all have our own baggage from childhood, and we need to become aware of it so we don't end up repeating it in our relationships. So the more toxic relationships we experience, the more we should be aware of how much within us we need to release. A very healthy person, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, is not going to entertain someone that treats them poorly. They're not going to get into relationships with people that cause them to be out of alignment with themselves. It doesn't mean it's easy. It can be very hard to do. That doesn't mean it's impossible. If you're someone that is in friendships currently and you know it's not aligned for what you want for your future self, that's a big sign to walk away from someone. You don't have to wait until you get to that better version of yourself. You have to start acting as if you're that version of yourself as soon as possible in order to become that future version of yourself as soon as possible. Unless you want to wait. You could wait, but that can take a very long time. And we become influenced by the people around us, whether we like to admit it or not. We can think that we know what we want. And even if the people around us aren't exactly what we want, our awareness is enough. And we can just keep some distance from people and we'll be fine. But that's not how it works. Energetically, we will be influenced and it will be harder to detach in the long run. The last sign that we're going to discuss is when the relationship no longer feels like an active choice. Now, I feel like this is a given because if we're not choosing something, how bad do we actually want it, honestly? And we know the truth. When we're not choosing something, it's because we don't want it that badly. Sometimes we can think that because we've been in a relationship for so long, why does it have to be an active choice? We're just so comfortable being ourselves with each other. Why leave? We worked so hard to get to where we are. We understand each other's quirks. We deal with each other's darker sides very well. What's the problem? We're not being honest with ourselves. When we get comfortable for too long, it starts to become uncomfortable. It starts to become very boring. And that's not because we need constant stimulation and energy and input and fights. It's because deep down we're here to grow. And we grow best through our relationships. Because if we were alone our whole lives and we never spoke to anyone, nobody would challenge us. We would be very peaceful. There's no one opposing our energy. But the second we're in a relationship, we have to learn how our own energy affects other people and how to deal with other people's energy in a healthy way. So when we're in a relationship where we're not doing any of those things, we're not being challenged to better ourselves and we're not being challenged to be more accepting of other people, we're doing a disservice to ourselves. All the relationships that we're in, we should be able to say that we would choose them every single day. No matter what bullshit you go through with this person, I still choose you. I'd rather go through the bullshit with you than with someone else. And if you don't feel that way, that's a big sign. And that shows you that it's time to move on and it's time to really get clear on what an active choice would actually look like and feel like to you so that you choose differently in the future. Before I wrap up this episode, I just want to say that every relationship is different. Every relationship hits a plateau, and we must all use our own discernment to make decisions. So whatever decisions you make in relationships, whether you decide to walk away from someone or you decide to stay and thug it out for the long haul, own it. Let it be an active choice. Let it be something that you're happy to work on. And if that sounds dreadful, then consider walking away. I hope this episode helped you gain clarity on the relationships in your life and really come to your own conclusions. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, please rate this podcast and leave a comment. I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on this topic. Relationships are a lot. They're so complex and there's so many different layers to it. So I would love to hear your own experiences and perhaps suggestions on other topics we could discuss, relationship specific. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen to this podcast. I hope you have an amazing week. I love you all. Until next time, bye for now.